Jeff Loomis, by the way, didn't I hear he's a basketball player as well?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is some basketball poverty reduction basketball. Interesting. All right. So folks, we've got a number of questions we're going to ask each of the panel, and we're going to get going. Really, let's start off with maybe a general overview of how your plans are going. We're going to go from west to east, though that's not where your provinces or territories are from. We're going to go from Karen to your right, okay? So let me ask this question. In general, tell us about your plan, its objectives and key priorities. What are its features in terms of who delivers it? The status of the plan, whether it's new or renewed or in the process of, and then something a little personal. What's important, what's special about your plan to you?
Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be here today. In terms of history, it was fascinating to hear your history. I hadn't heard that for a while. I was, one of the forefront folks in Ontario when we were watching what all the other provinces were doing and who was going to do what. So it's really exciting. I know yesterday Minister Matthews spoke quite a bit about Women's Caucus and the role that Women's Caucus played in actually developing the strategy and making it a reality in Ontario. So I won't start there. I'll just build off that and say that after that there was extensive consultation that occurred across the province at municipal level with individuals, with people with lived experience all across to actually develop the first strategy. What was remarkable about the first strategy is that the government came out with a very bold target. And this was back in 2008 when people talked about targets and they talked about measuring things, but how effectively we were doing that was still remained to be seen. And so they came out with a target of reducing poverty by 25% in 5 years. So that was kind of the hallmark of the first strategy, which was quite bold. And a little daunting, I have to say, for some of us who were charged with being involved with that. But what we did was we actually did reduce poverty. And the way we did that was through a number of targeted measures. And when I say measures, I mean programs and initiatives and things that we did within the individual ministries that actually helped contribute to the reduction of poverty. We were successful in meeting some of our target, but we didn't actually meet the entire target. So that was something that we, on one side, we were a little disappointed on, but on the other, when we reflected back, we realized that we actually did make a significant impact on child poverty in Ontario, because it was probably one of the worst recessions that we'd had. It impacted Ontario quite significantly. So what we learned is that if we can do it then, we can do this. We can actually put very strategic programs and initiatives in place that will actually have an impact on poverty in Ontario. So we went through that, and just recently we announced our second strategy. So we have released Realizing Our Potential in September, and really, and I don't know if the picture did make its way up, but I do have a handout both in French and English for folks, and I'll just really, and the minister actually talked a little bit about this yesterday, but it is built on sort of 4 pillars. The first 2 around continuing to break the cycle for kids and youth, and then moving towards employment and income security. Those are 2 key pillars that were featured in the first strategy, and because we didn't quite meet our target, we are continuing and recommitting to reducing poverty by 25% in Ontario. So those strategies will continue. Some of those initiatives and programs were things like the Ontario Child Benefit, our full-day kindergarten program, and as well as our youth employment programs, et cetera. So there's a whole host of things we're doing all together that actually start to move the targets along. What's new in this strategy is the commitment to end homelessness in Ontario. I think the minister spoke quite passionately about that yesterday, but we do know that this is achievable, and it's something that we are fully committed to. So that's the big bold piece in the strategy for the next 5 years. We're starting with getting expert advice because we actually don't know. We don't know enough about. We know a lot about homelessness. We've got lots of research and papers and so forth, but we really do need to start to tease out a common definition of what it is, as well as a way to measure it. The fourth pillar is about using evidence, and again, I think the minister spoke a lot about this, but if we don't measure things, we know that they actually don't get done, or you don't actually realize where you're going or what's working. And so we recently, one of the key things under the evidence piece is around the local poverty reduction fund. It's actually going right down to the communities where we know there are programs and initiatives that are working. When we were preparing or getting ready for the next strategy, we did, of course, another consultation. And in that consultation, we heard repeatedly all of these great ideas that people were using, and tactics and programs and initiatives, and it was all community-led. So we know that there's a lot going on out there that we're missing at the provincial level that we actually need to sort of dive into and get a much better sense of what's happening, and that's what the fund's about. The other significant thing that we did, I think, this round was we added, we have legislation, we have strategies, but we actually created the Poverty Reduction Office, which is what I'm heading up now. We've been around since November, so it's still early days for us, but that's another really significant indication, I think, to everyone that we are very serious about doing this. So it gives a charge of a small group of people to actually work across not only ministries, also work with federal government as well as municipalities, and then with communities around how we're going to come together to actually start to move the yardsticks. And in that, there was the other thing that the government did is they've actually asked MPP Chris Ballard, who is with us today, to become the parliamentary assistant with Minister Matthews to lead the charge on poverty reduction. So that's yet another commitment that will start to move the yardsticks along. And I'm very pleased to have you with us today, and I'm sure he's at the front here. I'm sure he'll be mingling around. You can meet him this evening. But again, it has made a big difference. I think what's important to me is that the bridge between the first strategy and the second strategy has been quite significant, and that it started out as being more of the right thing to do, and it's still the right thing to do to end poverty, but people are starting to become much more acclimatized to the economic impacts that it has, not just because people are trying to save money, but simply because we want people in Ontario to be healthy. We want people to live well. This is a beautiful province, a beautiful country, and there isn't any reason why we can't start to make a significant difference here. And I'm really starting to see that momentum. And feeling that in this room and in this particular conference, it's only sort of energized me more to know that there's a lot that we can do collectively. So I think that's the thing that excites me the most. Of course, the local poverty reduction fund really excites me too, because we're really going to be able to see lots of great things, and also working with these experts on homelessness, which is a persistent problem, but one that I think is solvable.
Thank you. As Jim mentioned, the government of Newfoundland and Labrador's poverty reduction strategy stemmed from a promise to transform our province from one with the most poverty to one with the least. And with the most recent data, we're tied for having the second lowest levels of poverty in the country. So we've come pretty close. Made a lot of progress. We still have a lot of work left to do, though, and we never want to kind of overstate that progress in a way that will be done. I was really struck yesterday by Alan Broadbent's comment that poverty is something society creates, and I think that's a really important point. While we call our strategy a poverty reduction strategy, our vision in that strategy is of a province where poverty's been eliminated. And if you want to talk about poverty being eliminated, you have to accept that it's something society has created. And that's sometimes controversial. I've had people challenge me on that and say, the poor will always be with us. And my response to that is, we'll always have vulnerable people, and in fact, any one of us could be vulnerable at any time. How as a society we support vulnerable people, that speaks to whether or not we'll have poverty. So our strategy, we released our first action plan in 2006. There are 3 key directions to prevent, reduce, and alleviate poverty, and those are still the directions that guide our strategy. In terms of kind of updating where we are, in June last year, we put out a progress report. I brought about 100 copies. I think they're all gone. So if anybody wants a copy, you can just let me know, and we can certainly send one out to you. It's on our website as well. And it shows that we've made significant progress, as the overall indicators do. But in putting that together, it also highlighted some real areas of concern. So from November to March, we had a large engagement process in our province to talk to people about what needs to be in a new poverty reduction action plan. and what the priorities needed to be. So we had identified some areas that came out of the research that we did. One of those was people in extreme poverty. In Newfoundland and Labrador, we have our own measure of poverty, the Newfoundland and Labrador Market Basket Measure, which uses a very similar methodology to the national market basket measure, but that's based on survey data. So in a small jurisdiction like us, it's not as useful a tool if we want to look underneath the surface. So our market basket measure is based on survey data. We work with Statistics Canada, to put that together. And one of the things when we looked at that, when we looked at people in extreme poverty, so people who fall more than 50% below the cutoff, we saw we weren't making the same kind of progress that we are in general. We do have lower numbers. We have made some progress, but not the kind of progress we need to make. So that was one of the areas that we highlighted in the progress report that we really need to work on. Another one was the increasing costs and necessities, and in particular housing. Newfoundland and Labrador has the highest home ownership rate in the country, but we've seen a real shift in our housing market and in the affordability of housing. And we've had a long-standing issue with affordable, nutritious food in areas of our province, and we're hearing more and more about that. Also, becoming really concerned about vulnerable youth in our province. Some of that showed in that same data around people in extreme poverty, but just also some increases there in terms of youth poverty that are really concerning to us. Or I guess I can't say increases, the numbers are sort of stable, and that's not good enough. So we had identified kind of 5 areas going into our engagement process. And I guess for us, our relationship with community broadly has been incredibly important, and in particular, people with personal experience of poverty. And right from the beginning, that's where we started, and that's an ongoing part of our strategy. So we went out from November to March and tried to talk to as many people with personal experience of poverty as we could. We talked to anyone who would talk to us. We didn't exclude other people, but the resources that we had, we put all of those into trying to engage with as many people with lived experience as we could. And we talked to, I've been saying over 1,000, we had about 1,600, responses in different ways from people, either people participating in focus groups, most of which were led by our community partners, or completing an online feedback form, or sending us an email or a phone call. But we know a lot of people did more than one. So from that process, we also did something a little bit different in Labrador. It's always a challenge for us. We're such a geographically huge province. I mean, we're a small jurisdiction, 550,000 people over a huge geography. And usually when we, consult in Labrador, we'll go up, we'll do a session in either Lab City or Happy Valley Goose Bay, and we'll probably go to the coast and, we'll check that box off. And we just felt that really wasn't good enough, particularly given we really wanted to reach out to Aboriginal people. So we held a virtual roundtable summit. We wrote all our Aboriginal governments and Aboriginal community groups, and over 2 days, we had summits in over 10 communities in Labrador, and it worked really well. We have some advice on how to improve it even more for next time, but it was a really successful process. So coming out of that, we've got 6 new priority areas that are slightly different than what we went into the process. I can outline those. I want to make sure I get them right. So the first one is housing. We had originally kind of conceived that as part of increasing costs and necessities, but we heard so much about housing that is a priority area in and of itself. We heard about not only the affordability, but the appropriateness of housing and issues with our Residential Tenancies Act and so on. So a lot of work to do there. The kind of priority around increased supports for vulnerable youth was confirmed. We also heard a lot. We went in with one of our priorities being, a continued emphasis on early childhood development and early learning. And while that was confirmed, we were really challenged by a lot of people, particularly with personal experience, about why would we only focus on young children, that we needed to focus on all children and support families with children in general. So we've kind of reframed that one a little bit. Another one of our priorities going in was carrying on with our work on removing financial disincentives to work, because that's been one of the major areas where we've made a lot of progress in our strategy. So we've had, with our budget, which was only last week, to date we've had over $1.2 billion in investments in new initiatives in our province since the start of our poverty reduction strategy. And when you think of a province with just over 500,000 people, it's huge. And even we had a very difficult budget this year, and even there we've had an increase in initiatives in our poverty reduction strategy. So that's all new money. We don't count things that we were already doing prior to the strategy. And a bunch of those have been focused on trying to make sure that work pays for people, because one of the things when we think about society creating poverty, what government's role is, we've inadvertently created a situation where we trap people in poverty. And it isn't that we have a bunch of evil public servants in a room somewhere who put their heads together and try and figure out how to keep people trapped in income support, but somehow that's what we've done, right? So working collaboratively across government has been a really important element, and making sure all the right people are in the room and that we're looking at it from the perspective of people who have that experience, because that's what leads you to bring all the right players in the room and dismantle a system that doesn't work for people. So we've done that through a number of different ways, and I'll save that for we're doing another session after this one in one of the workshops, so we're going to be doing a deeper dive in that. So if you want to know more about that, I can talk about it then. But we were really challenged to talk about improving supports for people to work, not just removing financial disincentives. People acknowledge that we've done some really good work there. Still have a lot of work left to do around people with disabilities. But we've made a lot of progress, and we're seeing that. We have thousands of people working every year who wouldn't have made sense for them to go to work before the strategy. And we also have a lot more people. We have about 2,000 people working a year while they're receiving income support too, which is also a huge success when you think about breaking that intergenerational dependency on income support. When there's that experience of work in the family, it makes a huge difference. So one that we hadn't gone forward with, although it was a goal in our current action plan, and one we knew we still had work to do, but we heard it so loudly and clearly, it's a priority area, is continuing to work on improved access, awareness, and coordination of programs and services. We heard that from every single person who has personal experience of low income who talked to us. It was a common theme. And then we do have improved access to necessities, but that was sort of broadened out. Transportation is a huge issue in our province. I'm so jealous listening to the mayors of our big cities talking about their transit systems. Like, we have bus services in 2 cities in our province, that's it. In our rural areas, we're actually seeing a kind of diminishing of services as some of the people who kind of ran small taxi services are retiring, and no one seems to be taking over those businesses. So we have a huge issue around transportation in our province. We also heard a lot about access to adult learning and literacy as a necessity, and I think that's an important way that we've been challenged as a government to continue to think about that. So I'm going to hand it. Oh, the other thing I have to mention, we did not refer in our kind of discussion guide to our guiding principles, even though they've been really important to us. And we heard about those everywhere we went, that we needed to keep those in view, and that there were a couple we needed to add. And the 2 we were challenged to add were mental health and addictions, that we really need to consider those in everything that we do. And the second one was that was where focusing on extreme poverty belonged. It wasn't a separate priority area, but one that was interwoven in all of the others. So anyway, we'll look forward to your questions, and also to those of you who want to hear more later this afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not going to talk about the background and the history part, because Jim did a very good job at it, and I want to thank him, because he's been the first president of the corporation, and you could feel the passion when he was talking about the New Brunswick experience. So thank you, Jim. I know that you worked very hard at this, and we miss you. We miss you, right? So, but we're still in touch with Jim once in a while, and we're very fortunate that we can still give him a call, and get some good advice. So we appreciate. The New Brunswick experience is very similar to the other provinces, even though we're all unique. There's some differences, but poverty, being as complex as it could be, has a lot of similarities, and what's going on in New Brunswick is unique in a way where the corporation itself, and I'll talk about the composition of the board, because we have a board of directors. Even though we have an act, we also have a board of directors, which is playing a significant role, because they're the one making the calls about the plan and how to evaluate and where we should go, and if we need to get in touch with some stakeholders that sometimes we might forget about. They remind us, and we have a very good composition on the board, where we have 4 ministers, 1 opposition. That's still very present at the board, but we also have 4 business, 4 non-for-profit, and 8 people who have lived or are still experiencing poverty. And that's very, very key to our discussions, because really it helps us stay connected to the reality. And even though we have a plan with a lot of priority actions and some big strategies in there, those people who are experiencing the reality of poverty are bringing us that flavor that I can't understand because I never lived with poverty. So really that's very helpful, and people like Juanita that you've seen yesterday and the others are making a significant impact to our own reality. So a board of 22 members, which is a big table, as you can understand. And we have to work a lot by consensus. And the relationship is amazing. I mean, it's a together thing. When we're talking about our files and the results and how to measure and all of that, it's a together. We can't walk out of the room without anyone agreeing to the big principles. So that's the spirit around the table, and it's very interesting. Another key component, which Jim excuse me, talked about a bit, was the community inclusion networks. And that's where each region has a network. So we've divided the province into 12 regions, and each of those regions have a staff. So that is very helpful, because that's where a lot of things are happening. Our job with the corporation is to oversee and coordinate the big provincial things, the change of policies, the gathering with the various departments, the better collaboration with the departments. But the things at the regional level and at the local level really belongs to the 12 networks. And that's where we see a lot of things getting off the ground. And for every dollar that we are putting in as a corporation, the communities with their partners are leveraging 4 times that amount. So that's a great return on investment. And that's something that as a civil servant, I use a lot. Believe me, when I'm going to talk to any government department out there, I challenge them by saying, prove me or show me any other initiatives out there that had such a great return on investment. And it pays off, because we've been in operation since then. And it's very helpful, because we can show the numbers and we can show the leverage and contribution from the communities, because that's where the real things are happening. I mean, we can look at the provincial level, a change of policies. It's important. It has to be part of the game. But as Jim mentioned, government doesn't own the plan. They're part of it, and they have to step in and also step out when it's time to walk away from it, or not necessarily walk away, but let the other sectors play the role that they have to play as well. So that's very, very interesting to look at that scenario and see how things are taking shape in our province. We are presently in the first phase of the second plan, because the first plan, which started in 2009, finished or ended at the end of November of 2014. And within the next few weeks, you will hear about us again, because we will release the first report for the first 5-year plan. And there's some great numbers, some good, very good information about the work that has been done by the communities, the 22 priority actions, which 95% of them were either completed, you know, or that they're in progress. That's huge. I don't know a lot of plans out there, which I've seen throughout my career, that have been accomplished to such a higher level. It's amazing, and that speaks by itself as well. And the new plan has 28 priority actions. We had 22 in the first one, but 28 this time. And again, we went through a public engagement process where we talked to the New Brunswickers, and we had 3 specific questions. We asked them what could be done at the provincial level. So that was the stuff that we could move forward. What could be done at the regional level and in their own communities as well. So we got some very, very good information, which was then translated into the big provincial plan, and also helped the 12 networks to shape their new regional plan, because every 2 years, the networks have to come up with a regional plan, which tackles their local priorities in their own specific region. And we provide them with some funding. Indeed, 75% of the funding of the corporation is going back into the communities. So that's quite significant and very important to help them for the leverage into different initiatives that they're moving forward. So a lot of things that are exciting. We're going to have 3 advisory committees again. We had 3 with the first plan. We're going to have 3 more this time. Actually, the first one, which is on transportation. Transportation is a big issue in New Brunswick. New Brunswick being a very rural province, we only have city transit in 3 cities, which is Moncton, Fredericton, and St. John. And even in those cities, all the transits are struggling. So we struck an advisory committee on transportation, whose mandate is to look at what's out there, what exists in other jurisdictions, and what could be done with the assets that we have in New Brunswick. How can we connect those dots and use maybe the school buses to be part of the strategy? Use the different assets that we have and connect them all together. So the committee is going to come up with a strategy which is going to be very, very interesting. A lot of good work has been done as well with the first plan, where we've seen a reform with social assistance. And that was a big piece of it as well. The health benefits, so vision and dental program for the low-income people, and we're not talking about social assistance recipients, we're talking about the working poor here who now have access for their kids to vision and dental plans. And same thing for the prescription. Thanks. Indeed, when that was announced, we had the honor to be invited at the Legislative Assembly, and it was quite a moment, I can tell you. Juanita was there once again, and some other board members, and it was a real happening. We really felt that we reached an important milestone at that point. Prescription drug program is another great example, which has been announced by the former government, and the new government is moving forward as well with this one, and minimum wage and a lot of specific things that really move forward. So we're transitioning right now from the first plan to the second plan, and the remaining action that wasn't completed with the first plan will be carried over into the second one. That's the decision that the board made. So we're not looking at the first plan, we're talking about the first plan like something that belonged to the past. It's still a real thing, which we will keep on monitoring and report on as we move forward. So basically, I guess I'm going to stop now because we were allowed 10 minutes and I want to take the whole time. And yeah. I know we have another session after this one. So really, there's a lot of exciting things going on, and but still a lot of work to do as well. Thank you.
Kaya na may inok dito okalagon na ko maakawa yung ngaraksyon kasi nito kasi jakong nase, right? I'm from far north. Since I've been down here or Edmonton, other places, people always ask me, "Did you drive down here?" I just want to show you where Nunavut is. Sometimes Canadians don't even know where Nunavut is. It's a big territory in your country. That's where I'm from. So I want to show you where that is. The territory of Nunavut is from here. This is where I'm from, where I live now. It's down here and up this way, Manitoba border. It's a little bit of Saskatchewan. It goes up and up to high Arctic islands. Right around there, show Greenland. That's my territory. It's the largest landmass, I think, in Canada. As Jim mentioned, I was part of the group that designed the government and the departments prior to 1999. My home is up here, and I live here now. And there's people that live up here in these islands that were transplanted from northern Quebec area where there are trees. The Canadian government decided that they were going to pluck people out of here, put them up there, plunk them on the beach with the ships, and say survive. And they survived in a tent. So there's 2 communities up there that are created by government of Canada. So that's where we're from. There's no roads. My colleague here talked about she's jealous about all this transit kind of things. We don't even talk about buses, we talk airplanes. So I just want to share something. We are very new government, 15 years old. I thought if I come up this far in 15 years, we're going to try very hard to catch up to older provinces. So I think we're pretty much like, I don't know if Ontario was 15 years old. Did they have a strategy? Did they have action plan? and we do. So I just want to say that we are the people that from family groups in the community, right along there. We were never together as people. We were just family groups. But one day, Government of Canada person woke up in Ottawa, decided that we need to put all these people together up there. So those are educated people, because not educated people did not know the area. So somebody had to be educated to know, I need to go up there, put people together. So somebody did that. So they put us in one community, some communities. It formed 25 communities in that area, and there's about 30 to 40,000 people. That's it. And the community that I pointed out, way up there, is about 150 people, and I'm in Iqaluit that has about 7,000 to 8,000 people. That's headquarters for government Nunavut. In the 70s, people negotiated with Government of Canada for about 20 years, and they ratified the Land Claims Agreement in 1993, and it's most comprehensive land claim. It's embedded in Constitution of Canada. So we did a good job in a very short time. So I wanted to say that government is only 15 years old. There's about 11 departments in my government. It's a public government like any government. It's not Aboriginal or Innu government. It's a main, just like your governments. And we don't have a responsibility on national defense or fisheries and oceans. We don't have those, but other ones we govern. It's a public government, so you could come up there, do your residency, you can run for public office. When we say Nuna, that means land. So Nuna is land. When you put Vut at the end, Nunavut, you're claiming that land up there. Okay? The land is for everybody. It doesn't belong to me or anybody, it's all of us together. That was, I think, was purposely Nunavut. If I'm in New Zealand and I say Nunavut, I'm claiming that area. So, I wanted to also mention the newspaper that was mentioned earlier this morning about Globe. Where is the hardest place to live in Canada? By TVA Grant. And the picture that I saw was Iqaluit. And that's my territory. I want to say, when you read that article, because you were encouraged to read it, when you read that article, you need to think about, like, when you watch documentaries on TV about polar bears, you are starting to think that there's a little pad of ice somewhere up there, and there's 2 polar bears on it. And pretty soon they're going to die. There's not going to be any more polar bears left, and it's all going to be gone. That's what I want you to think when you read Global Mail about the hardest place to live in Canada. So I just needed to mention that, because we have lots of polar bears, we have lots of ice. So don't worry about it. Inuit have a hard time defining poverty, and I think it was mentioned yesterday. It's something else. It's more than money, and it's about a person. It's what's in your heart and what you do in life, and what the families do. To us, when government came out with poverty reduction, people kind of thought, what is that? But this premier at the time, she was female, she wanted to have poverty reduction going on in Nunavut. She's seen something that we could do something about. And so this older lady was on CBC radio because they had this show, call-in show kind of program on CBC. She's talking about, I'm in this big house, it's 2-bedroom, I'm the only one sleeping in here, nobody sleeps with me in my bed, and there's another room in my room, and that's where my clothes are. And I have like 20 dresses, and people come to my house, give me food. I'm rich. Like, she's probably on an old age pension, that's probably all she's getting. To her, she was very rich. She has her family, she has a house. She's got this dedicated room for her clothing. So she felt that I'm not poor. So we went through a couple of years about, what's poverty? So, but we are the government, and we want to help everybody up there. So when our elders speak about hardship in a traditional way, they had a very hard time sometimes when the weather's not favorable for hunting, long winters or whatever the weather was doing. Then people didn't have food. To them, that was being poor. That was like, almost starving. I'm not immune to that because I went through the same thing. And when one year my parents couldn't get any seals or polar bears or seals, so we almost starved to death. But once they get seals, we didn't feel like we were poor. We had something to eat. So defining poverty is very different for us. And traditionally, we feed ourselves, we clothe ourselves, and we make our own houses, kamaks, igluvigats, tents. And the way to be was to be self-reliant. It's the only way to live. But there has been very massive change happen within the last 60 years, including I don't want to say negative, I want to say challenge impacts of colonial social policies and the ongoing shifting, I don't want to miss anything in, wage economy have created challenges for many Inuit that manifested themselves as we refer to poverty today. That's a new way of thinking that we're doing right now. And the changes have shifted the needs required to survive and thrive, and this without consideration of our ability to meet them through our own means. Many Inuit have managed to bridge these two worlds, but there's still a lot of work to do. My culture and your culture need to come together properly in Nunavut. And we need to understand each other, because we can't help it that you're there. Your culture is there, like Canadian culture maybe, and Inuit culture, they're there. We need to live with that, and we're proud of it, That's why I mentioned we have public government, because it's your home too. And reduction of poverty in our territory is going to be very important measure of our success in providing combination of programs and services that supports Nunavut Mute. Nunavut Mute meaning people in Nunavut in times of need. But also challenges and encourages them to build communities and livelihoods, educate and train themselves, and also self-reliance is very important to raise their children with support of government, with my support as a government. We don't want to be there, but we want to be there to support what the communities are trying to do to reduce poverty. You probably heard a lot about our watermelon costs $30, and honestly, 4 liters of milk is $13 in some communities. But if I'm talking about Greasefield, way up there, it's probably close to $20 a milk. But you need to understand when you're working up there, whether it's for private or whether it's for a land claim organization or government from Nunavut, you get what they call northern allowance on top of your salary to accommodate, to be able to buy this food. And our approach to poverty reduction has been based on the idea that the problem is too complex for government to own or to try to solve it by themselves. So government Nunavut has partnered with Nunavut Tungavik, that's a land claim organization, and to engage Nunavut Mute and our communities in finding the path forward together. What we have done in Nunavut is that they have run number of roundtable meetings. That's very, very expensive. If you can see airplane rides to everywhere to try to have a roundtable meetings. But you put together business people, government people, Inuit organizations, individuals, people in poverty, mom and dads, put them together and have a round table and have discussion. So we've come up with reports. We've come up with the first plan. Now we're in our second plan for implementation. These initiatives are coming from everybody, including the community people. And everybody sits down with MLAs, ministers, anybody that comes to a round table, and elected people, Inuit organizations. And the government of Nunavut has partnered with Nunavut Tungavik. So this is a land claim organization which has Article 32, is trying to do also telling government of Nunavut and government of Canada about state of Inuit culturally and in the language as well. So they make recommendations to these two governments to talk about this is what the state of Inuit are in Nunavut. There's about 85% of population in Nunavut are Inuit and speaking Inuktitut. And we're not still very good. We're still struggling how to speak English, but we're trying hard. Our shared approach is holistic approach. It is approach with unconventional emphasis on healing, reconciliation, and empowerment. And I just want to emphasize a little bit on healing. This healing term came from groups from down here. And again, in Inuktitut, we tried to kind of define it, because you can't heal people, you can heal yourself with support or help. So we are in mode about parenting, help the parents, mom and dads, aunts and uncles, to raise the children properly, being happy at home, security and safety at home, but you also go to school. Our children go to school from kindergarten to grade 3 are all in Inuktitut, 100% Inuktitut only. Then they start grade 4 in English. And in Iqaluit, you have a choice of, you can have your children in Francophone school if your grandparents have gone to French, if they speak French, one of your grandparents. So we don't have an Inuit school, but we do teach Inuktitut only from kindergarten to grade 3. And so a little bit about the healing part, I wanted to emphasize about the children, the parenting skills that we need to, as you can probably imagine, when somebody came up there to say, okay, this is your community, this is how you're going to run it, this is your settlement, and this is your social worker, this is your nurse, and this is your educator, this is your clergy, this is your policeman. Okay, people thought, we have no more responsibility. All the stuff that we were doing, the people that are doing it, they don't even speak my language. They can't even pronounce my name. My name is Oke, for example. My teacher could not pronounce my name, Oke. He kept calling me Yuki or Okay. So my father said, call her Rebekah, because that's her other name. That's how come I ended up being Rebekah. So it's little things like that. These people couldn't even say your name, but they're doing something about your life. But in a lot of different ways, this was embraced, because healthcare is good, and you didn't have healthcare. So if you can imagine, you have a baby out in the igloo, you know, what do you do if you got into a problem? Now we have very good healthcare, we have a good hospital, we have good schools, and so we embraced that even before there was government of Nunavut. Now we Inuit can be part of it. And if I look at the cabinet members in our government, let's say there's 8 of them, there's only one white person as a cabinet member. All the rest are Inuit who are elected. And we have 11 departments. There are 8 deputy ministers who are Inuit, and most of the ADMs are Inuit. So we're governing ourselves, even though we're not self-government. And so I'm going to quit talking here soon. The government, the Nunavut Round Table for Poverty Reduction, formally established in 2012. It was a secretariat when it started, and government wanted us to look at, to map out what's out there, what needs to happen, which government departments are doing what, how much money are they spending on social issues, social things. And the secretariat did that. Now it's in my department. Now we're trying to implement with very limited resources. As you can probably imagine, everything is very expensive. And overall leadership and direction of a round table is provided by Government Nunavut and Nunavut Tungavik, that's land claim. Other members included Inuit regional Inuit organizations. We have 3 of them. We have a Baffin region, we have Kivalliq, we have a Qitalmir, because we work in the three time zones. And so we have, there are Inuit organizations in each region in Nunavut. The others members include regional Inuit associations, hamlets. We don't have, like Aboriginal people down here, we don't have chiefs. We have mayors like you do. And so it's very much, municipality is hamlet, and there's only one city, that is Iqaluit, where I live. The round table also includes representative seats for youth, elders, persons with disabilities, and persons with lived experience of poverty. So they sit with us, and they be with us. Everybody's invited. The round table is close to launching its second poverty reduction plan. This plan seeks to achieve 8 things. They're interconnected. We want to see these outcomes. Working together, increase community decision making, strengthening local economies, strengthening support for healing and well-being, strengthening lifelong learning, and food security, more supportive income assistance system, and increased access to housing. Now, I'm talking like a government, but I'm a person, so I can also say I'm from a large family. I have dysfunctional relatives, and two of them live here right in Iqaluit. Right here in Ottawa on a street, because they choose to be there. We don't want them to be there. So what I'm trying to say is that it's people's choice to be doing that. And they have addictions with alcohol or drugs. And how much can we help them? What can we do to help them so that they're not on the street? We have many people in Iqaluit that are homeless. They had a home before with their aunts and uncles, mom and dads, because of their behavior, because of their drinking, because of their doing drugs. Family can't handle them anymore. So maybe 8 years after, you can't live here anymore. We're scared of you now. So that's our reality. I have to make it into a human being, not just numbers, not just nice programs that we're trying to do. I need to make it to being human. And if people didn't choose to, if majority of people that have no homes in Iqaluit, if they did not choose alcohol and drugs from their parents, they wouldn't be out there. I know they wouldn't. Some of them are my family. So, in closing, I think I talk longer than everybody. In closing, I just want to thank you. And our realities are different than yours. We have municipalities. It was good to hear municipalities doing a lot of work down here. But our municipalities are funded by our government, and they are busy doing roads and water delivery, sewage, and kind of municipal services. And they don't do a lot of social programs, but they're there to make decisions with us. They're there to support us, and it's their community that they need to look after. Kaya namin narakawasi.
That was a tour de force. Thank you very much for that. I learned a great deal. I think we all did. But the reality in the North in general, I'm so happy you did that, layered in the context that you're working in. Thank you so much for that. And thank you to everyone on the panel for such a rich discussion and description of your work. As was said, at 4 o'clock, there's a workshop on the provincial plans. And I think, Chris, you'll be able to join us for that. Fantastic. I think other staff from Nunavut will be there as well. So anybody who's interested in actually getting deeper into the provincial issues, I invite you to come to the 4 o'clock workshop with the panel and others. So that would be terrific. So thank you very much, folks. We're gonna do some other questions, but given the time frame, we're gonna move right along. So thanks a lot, and we'll look forward to workshopping together. Oh, we've got some gifts for you guys. So round of applause again for our panel. Thanks very much.